You want the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
You can't handle the truth!
Well, we're giving you the Michigan Sports Truth, the show that is honest, reveals the facts, truth, and statistics, and does not mess around. Follow me, Taylor Phillips, on Twitter at DT2Phillips. Email me at TaylorGatorPhillips14@yahoo.com. Follow Ed Smith on Twitter at EdSmith313, and go to our website at MichiganSportsTruth.com. Also like our Facebook page, The Michigan Sports Truth on Spreaker, and join our group with the exact same name. The Michigan Sports Truth podcast is also available on iHeartRadio and SoundCloud. Also a subsidiary of Sports Radio Detroit, thus available on iTunes and Podbean. The views expressed by the host of this podcast are not opinion-based or for entertainment purposes. They are actually facts and truth, no matter if other people like it or not. It is the Michigan Sports Truth, and nothing can ever stop it from being correct.
Hey there, Michigan sports fanatics, and welcome to episode 231 of the Michigan Sports Truth on Spreaker. This is the Cram-Everything-In edition. I'm Taylor Phillips with my co-host Ed Smith. Thanks so much for being on here with me. Ed, how are you?
Doing quite fine, believe it or not, Taylor. After we've had a few days to let everything soak in and digest concerning the, in most instances, yet another disastrous sports weekend for practically all teams within the state, except for one, of course. We'll get to them in a little while. But,
except for the Michigan
has been
Wolverines.
dominated. Exactly. Kind of gave away the spoiler, but I forgive you for this one. But this week has been dominated, I guess you would say, by one specific sort of news, and it does involve the Tigers. So I think there'll be no better way to get things started than jump into that one.
Yeah. Before we begin, I want to remind everyone to share this episode and our entire podcast on social media. Have their friends share that as well, and follow me on Spreaker as Taylor Phillips online at Spreaker.com, because I want to tell them that the Michigan Sports Truth podcast here on Spreaker is in search of local advertising sponsors. If anyone has a business that's interested in sponsoring this program, please email me at TaylorGatorPhillips14@yahoo.com or privately message me on Facebook or Twitter. You can also follow Sports Radio Detroit on Twitter at Sports Radio Det and like their Facebook page and join their Facebook group. Also, find their podcasts available on iTunes and Podbean. Got lots and lots and lots of Tigers to discuss and dissect as well, and analyze. Plus, we'll recap and preview Lions and college football in the mitten, Wolverines, Spartans, and Chippewas. And then we'll dig deep into two Red Wings articles and brief up a little bit of Pistons here, and then we'll wrap up the show with 10 questions. So let's start off first and foremost with our Detroit Tigers.
That one is long gone!
Now, getting straight to the point here in terms of their manager, Brad Ausmus, we've heard about the rumblings, rumors, sources, and article columns about the possibility of Brad Ausmus coming back with his option worth $9 million for 2017. But that was all coming from lazy and hypocritical beat writers from the Detroit sports media, whether it be Lynn Henning from the Detroit News, Chris McCoskey, or Anthony Fedek from the Free Press. And what I mean by lazy and hypocritical beat writers is that they don't back up anything they say in the body of their column articles or the headlines thereof. They also say that there's no reason to think that anybody is better than Brad Ausmus just to support Brad Ausmus because they love him. They think he's a great manager. That's just typical of them to be a bunch of PR fanboys who stick up for this stupid Dartmouth imbecile of an MLB manager.
Ah, shut up, you idiot. What? Oh.
Then we have the players themselves, such as Ian Kinsler, saying the same damn thing. Now we're hearing from... Yeah. Now we're hearing from...
If I can interject briefly, if you read Kinsler's quote, it didn't really sound like a ringing endorsement from the leadoff
Yeah, just he's our manager because he's our manager. He sounded like a broken record there. But then we heard from Jason Beck of MLB.com that general manager Al Avila was saying Brad Ausmus has done a good job and has managed the bullpen tremendously.
You're crazy! You're crazy! You're crazy! Are you crazy? Are you out of your mind?
I have very much an issue with the word that he used to describe. Tremendously is not a word I would use to describe Brad Ausmus in any way regarding his situation of him being manager of this team, especially when it comes to the bullpen. Either that or his lineups.
Well, speaking of tremendously, if you want to hear something tremendous, he managed the bullpen tremendously awful. In a tremendously awful fashion. Let's put it that way. So moving on, but back to Avila's quote. Avila didn't, there's no indication about any excuses. Assuming he didn't make any kinds of excuses, not even about any of the injuries the Tigers had this year, like Ryan Schilling was going to come up with the injury excuses that he said Avila was going to use to bring back Brad Ausmus, which I thought was inaccurate because it was weak. It was just a weak reason.
And very moved.
No offense, Ryan.
Very moved. No problems, Julie. But just saying here, because think about the other teams here: the Red Sox, the Indians, the Dodgers, the Mets. All of them had, a greater deal in terms of cumulative amount of games added up from all their players on the DL or extended injury, far more than what the Tigers had, and yet they still made the playoffs, or at least in the case of the Mets, got to the wild card play-in games, whereas the Tigers, their asses are sitting home this week. So you can't use the injury bug as an excuse in any sorts of defense whatsoever regarding trying to build a supporting case for Ausmus here.
Yeah, that would get the general manager fired. Now think about this. Last year, Al Avila told Motor City Bengals, or Motor City Bengals from Detroit Jock City via SI Fanside have reported that in an article headlining that he wanted to expand his focus on analytics in the late portions of last season, but it seems as if this year he somehow failed to do so. The biggest thing that convinced everyone to believe that Ausmus was going to return was that the Tigers were so close to a postseason berth down the stretch that they fell one game short after losing the last 2 of 3 games to the Atlanta Braves, who finished with the 3rd worst record in the National League. The Braves, for most of the season, had the worst record in the National League, and at some points had the worst record in the majors. That made us think that Avila shouldn't have picked up the option for Brad Ausmus. But now we're getting official word that Ausmus's option has been picked up.
Damn it!
Which means he's staying for one more year as manager of this mediocre ball club.
Damn it!
It's interesting to note that the club decided to pick up on his option, merely do that instead of just giving him a full-blown extension. You would think after 3 years, if you want to bring a guy back to your team, you would think you would give them more than 1 year, whereas you don't leave him hanging in the air about his uncertainty for the next offseason. But they decided to run with the option, which lets you know fully that really it's probably not a good case. They don't have much confidence of being with him. They're just taking it how it goes, season per season. Performance grade, so like a progress report per season. But you can't really do that with this type of situation regarding this team and this fan base and this owner. Just can't. So you would have rather just either bring it back for at least a 2 or 3 year extension, or just cut ties. But they decided to bring him back, pick him up on the option. We'll see how it affects him.
Right. Also, according to Jeff Moss, the founder, co-owner, and editor-in-chief of the Detroit Sports Rag, another reason Avila retained him is because Chris Ilitch didn't want to pay two managers at the same time. Here's an even better idea. If Avila and Chris Ilitch had any balls at all, they would have breached Ausmus's contract with a $9 million option and eaten up the rest of his money and then pay a new manager to turn things around. By the way, you people can follow Jeff Moss on Twitter at JeffMossDSR. So, Ed, I want your thoughts on Jeff Moss's publishing of the article that of how much Chris Ilitch wants to be hated.
Well, basically, what Jeff breaks down to, long story short, if anybody remembers the disastrous, in one way, the disastrous off-season move that the Tigers made in 2013 in terms of wanting to bring down, I guess you could say, trim some payroll, the Tigers decided to send Doug Fister, extremely important and very competent arm to our starting rotation. I think person, as well as a person who's very much liked by the fans, traded him away to the Washington Nationals for essentially nothing. And what he got back in return was just literally, less than peanuts for a dollar. You got the likes of Robbie Ray, Ian Cole, that amounted to nothing in terms of what it meant for the trade-off of giving away literally one of the best pitchers, not just on your rotation, but one of the best pitchers in the American League, I thought at the time. You gave him away for essentially nothing, and you didn't get shit back in return. So, and remember, that essentially was all from the orders of Chris Ilitch, because, there was uncertainty about Mike Ilitch's long-term health, and Ilitch, him, like you mentioned before, wanted to cut costs on payroll and budget and whatnot to avoid paying a luxury tax. So that's what led to the departure of Fister. And it seems like you alluded to, Chris Ilitch not wanting to pay for two managers, essentially he seems that he doesn't expect Mr. I to really, it seems like an issue of his health has come up yet again, and there's more uncertainty this time around than it was before. There's a good chance that Mike Ilitch might not be around for the 2018 opening day, as morbid as it is to say, but it is what it is. And if that's the case, it seems like Chris Ilitch wanted to do this option so that just in case that Mike would pass, he would rather just, and things to work out with Ausmus. Either way, he would rather sell the team and then make it go on from there. In terms of selling the team, I mean by selling the Tigers before the start of the 2018 season. That's what the article, in my opinion, alluded to if you read between the lines.
Yeah, we've heard rumors from Jeff Moss and Detroit Sports Nation Justin Spiro, a former co-host on the DSR podcast earlier this week, that Dan Gilbert is possibly owning the Tigers and the Lions in around 2 to 3 years. Meaning things may turn around. Well, granted, he may have to sell the Cleveland Cavaliers first, but I think it'll be worth it, especially after the Ford family sells the Lions, which we'll get to momentarily a bit later on. But still a lot of Tigers to talk about. Well, what could have been and should have been, it's real simple. The Tigers would have been greater despite Brad Ausmus, but we knew Brad Ausmus was going to drag them down with his stupid in-game decisions and his lies to the media, etc. So the Tigers could have and should have tanked the rest of this previous regular season and could have and should have fired Brad Ausmus in result and hired Manny Acta, Gabe Kapler, or Alex or Joey Cora. Other options listed by our boss, the co-owner and program director of Sports Radio Detroit, Rogelio Castillo, whichever pronunciation, were Carlos Tosca, Omar Vizquel, David Martinez, and Torrey Lavello. First off, Manny Acta, of course, Jeff Moss, among others, have suggested this former Indians and Indians and Washington Nationals manager. He has over 15 years' experience, ranging from being a general manager of the Tigres del Licey in the Dominican Republic. He won the 2004 Caribbean World Series, to baseball analyst for Fox and ESPN. He's been using sabermetrics in all of his stops, so it fits in the mold that Al Avila is taking with the Tigers. Carlos Tosca, from 1980 to 2001, Tosca was a manager for 17 seasons in the minor league organizations of the New York Yankees, Kansas City Royals, and Florida Marlins, now the Miami Marlins, in addition to the Atlanta Braves, building up an overall of 932 and 827. 932 wins and 827 losses. The Cuban-born manager would be an ideal fit in a clubhouse that is diverse and brings over 40 years of experience with him as a baseball coach. Omar Vizquel, he knows the ball club, he will be managing the Venezuelan team in the World Baseball Classic in 2017, and he has expressed an interest in managing. Not much to see except that. David Martinez, currently the bench coach with the Cubs, he has served as Joe Maddon's right-hand man. He has developed a good reputation with the younger players in Chicago, and being next to Madden since his days in Tampa helps. Tampa Bay Rays. And finally, Torey Lovullo. This former Tigers farmhand player is currently the bench coach for the Red Sox and has come up as the hot manager candidate out there. He does not have the experience of Acta or Tosca, but is known for his baseball smarts. Not quite sure whether it's sabermetrics or high leverage in-game decisions or strategies or whatnot. They might not. They might pay off too. But the best one, of course, Manny Acta.
Acta will be the preferred choice by leaps and bounds, I would say.
Yeah, but now that the Tigers have picked up Ausmus's option, they'll have to. They might as well have no choice but to wait on Manny Acta for at least one more year, unless Acta has signed a multi-year deal elsewhere. But what will now be instead for the Tigers, on the other hand, is just another year of mediocrity or worse because of his stupid in-game decisions, which are going to keep costing the Tigers plenty of wins and the top spot in the American League Central Division again, like it did last year in 2015 and 2016. Maybe a postseason berth again as well. Brad Ausmus is still horrible at three things here: lineup construction, having a sense of urgency, and making the in-game decisions that we need him to make. The right in-game decisions. Now, granted, he had improved a little in sacrifice bunting, but not much. And he used Francisco Rodriguez, their closing pitcher, in the last 2 months of the regular season, for 4-out save attempts. Most of them have worked. But Francisco Rodriguez, as we know, blew 5 saves, but recorded 44 total, which is incredible. That tied the single season amount that Todd Jones recorded, I believe, in the year 2000. Now,
Rodriguez was decent at the very least. It wasn't as bad as Joe Nathan bad or Jose Valverde on his worst days, but still, a little bit of room of improvement. He wasn't exactly near Zach Britton numbers, who, being on the topic of Zach Britton, I can't believe Buck Showalter still has a job today, or the fact that he didn't use Britton in that wild card play-in game between Toronto and Baltimore. But not so surprised when you consider the fact that Showalter is one of the biggest supporters and backers of Brad Ausmus and his managing style. So that kind of makes sense in a whole lot of ways.
Yeah, also still a little better than Joe Nathan, who blew 7 saves in 2014. Can't forget that one.
And it was also being a complete dick and asshole to the fans, and well as throwing a young Nick Castellanos under the fucking bus. So fuck you, Joe Nathan.
Yeah.
Just want to get that out of the way.
Joe Nathan is exactly no G.I. Joe himself. Now here's what I hope will happen in 2017, and this is out of desperation. You ready for this? The Tigers need a tank again like they did in 2015, or maybe worse than that, in order to convince Al Avila, the Illiches, and the rest of the front office to fire Brad Ausmus after 2017, or maybe earlier during the 2017 regular season. I'm hoping at least maybe around 110 to 120 losses, if not around 130 or 140, because that'll be a little too hasty. The Tigers
and highly unrealistic.
Yeah,
and highly unrealistic, to be honest.
Yeah, I'll just stick to 110 to 120, just to be honestly, a little more fair.
I'm thinking if they drop below 80 wins again, and let's say they finish around, like I say, 75-ish, right? 75.
That's not tanking.
75 and 80. Yeah, but still, it's far below what they had this year. And consider the fact that you brought back Ausmus for your 4th year. That'll be the 3rd straight year you missed out on playoffs, and you didn't even reach the 80-win plateau. I think that's good grounds for at least a parting of ways, not being brought back if you don't want to go out and out and officially say you're fired. That's still very reasonable. I think that's as reasonable a win total you want for them in terms of quote-unquote tanking and not wanting to bring back Ausmus for a 5th year. That's the more realistic to say, oh, wow, yeah, they're going to win 30 or 40 games. Come on, this roster, the way they're constructed, this is not 2003 anymore.
Right. Well, right. We may believe that the Tigers may have too much talent on the roster to tank, but this is what it's going to take to alter Al Avila's thoughts and considerations. Fans shouldn't take this from a personal standpoint. This is just business, because the Tigers will just never win any championships whatsoever with Brad Ausmus managing them, and we all know that already. That's the bottom line.
If the thing that really hurt Ausmus was the fact that he's essentially a rookie manager being put in charge of a roster that had a $200 million payroll, excuse me, and they had talent of the likes of Miguel Cabrera, JD, and Victor Martinez, Justin Verlander, not to mention the additions with Cameron Maben and Justin Upton, the offensive arsenal, and like the arms that you have with Zimmerman, Norris, and Fulmer. It would seem on paper this is a team that should be able to win probably, if not around 90 games, if not 90 games exactly, then right around the plateau instead of 86, So I think they're going on what the potential could be for Ausmus, but still, you shouldn't have, I think, imagine with that much inexperience not been given in charge of this type of team. I think there is room, believe it or not, for Ausmus to grow into a respectable and decent manager, because he just needs to tone down a couple of things. A, his lineups. B, show some type of urgency that he had a lack of showing throughout the whole season. And 3, don't be so damn stubborn with your in-game decisions, whether it be sticking to the illogical thing of 8th inning guys must pitch 8th inning, or 9th inning guys must pitch 9th. Hey, take an example of what the Indians did tonight against the Red Sox. They brought their 9th inning guy into the 8th because they knew how important this game was. Knowing they got Kluber on the mound for game 2, they wanted to get this in. So what does Terry Francona do? Shows us some fucking urgency, brings in his 9th inning guy to get it done in the 8th, and he takes a chance and gets it done in the 9th. That's an example of what an adequate manager or a guy who knows what the hell he's doing should be able to do and provide for you.
Well, definitely. And I still believe Brad Ausmus will have no sense of urgency whatsoever. like Jeff Moss kept pointing out several and many times before today. And that's one of the main things that keeps dragging the Tigers down. Brad Ausmus will never change. That's why I'm already getting my new hashtag, Tank to Fire Ausmus 2017 on Twitter. You can all follow me at DT2Phillips and join my movement. If you dare, if you can actually handle it. Brian Zayan, that kid Zaza actually decided to join up. He's the first to do so, and he will be my new talk show co-host on the Michigan Sports Truth podcast. He will help me do post game with the Red Wings, Pistons, and Lions, and Wolverines and Spartans, and my Chippewas, and then the Tigers in 2017. But you and I are still on Spreaker, and that's the main and we're in the main discussion here, and that's what matters. But this is how I feel about Brad Ausmus. He'll never change. That's why the Tigers will stay the same, and that's why the Tigers will never win a championship with him. Therefore, this is the only way that they're going to get rid of Ausmus. That's how I feel.
You're not exactly alone in thinking that, Taylor. Like, I'm kind of with you. I just don't think it's going to be logically possible at all for them to lose a bare minimum 100 to 110 games to get that done. I think if that's going to happen, and knowing how they just severely underperform, but not drastically like an 0-3 bad or 0-5 bad, I think, getting around, a 75-ish wins or whatever, if they fall below the 80-win plateau and miss the playoffs, that'll be well enough reasonable ground to not bring back Ausmus. Don't necessarily have, and like I said, because with this roster and this payroll, the way it's constructed, it'll be virtually impossible to go on a bad run like we saw in 2003.
That's what I'm not really predicting. I'm still a believer, but to say the least, I believe that's what it's going to take. But as far as the fans out there that are running for the Tigers to win, they're only accidentally or incidentally rooting for Brad Ausmus to stay, and that's what they don't want. Therefore, I encourage them. I encourage them, not demand, but I encourage them to join my movement, hashtag Tank to Fire Ausmus 2017 on Twitter.
Yeah, I think I recognize that, but I'm just giving you the perspective of devil's advocate. You would say, something that I've mentioned before, when you are a fan base that has gone this long without a championship, and you realize that a window is closing, you want to get it done before that window closes. Some might argue that the window is already closed, but still, for the very few out there that still has that last glimmering hope, even if it means dealing with Brad Ausmus for an extended number of time, way more than you want to, that's what the allure of getting that championship means to them that bad. They're willing to put up with this shit. And that's not nearly an indictment on them. It's just a realization of the situation that's around them.
That's another good point. But sometimes, no matter how desperate we get, that it's just not going to work. It'll just never work. That's just how I feel. Even if I'm like overly desperate for the Tigers to win it, that kind of pain is not worth my life. It's not worth my time. So I'm going to root against them, even if I have to do it alone. And that's all this is. So, other than Brad Ausmus, we got to go through the entire roster here. What roster changes do the Tigers need to make if they want to keep improving? Let's start off with their offense. Their offense as a whole was totally putrid down the stretch, which makes us think that the Tigers should also have fired should also have fired their hitting coach Wally Joyner. We need to look at which players disappointed us and riled us up. Tyler Collins is one of them. I can't stand the guy. His bat looked like Swiss cheese, and he flipped off the fans once like almost like Joe Nathan did in 2017. The only difference, Nathan gave him the chin flip, and Tyler Collins gave the fans the middle finger. And then he also kept whining and crying at the umpires at calls that were correct, which he didn't agree with.
You're just a crybaby, a coward.
Now, Tyler Collins is still young, but he still hasn't matured up. That's the only way the only other way that you can put it into words. And that's the truth about Tyler Collins. He's a spoiled little brat that still hasn't learned about sportsmanship.
Well, if you want to remedy that, try to find a way to fix that. Do what you did to Rondon. Send his ass home. Don't give her some form of demotion or winter demotion, or have him stay down in the minor leagues for a good majority of the season. Try to give him some type of way to learn not only a maturation level with his on-field game, but also obviously with his personality and how he treats things, how he handles things outside of the playing field. So that'll be one indicator. And hey, since you have him up here, how about if you're going to send down Collins, give Stephen Moy a better chance? There was, it seemed like almost essentially a roster waste or a help you scratch that you brought Moy up with your September call-ups, but you barely used him at all in favor of the likes of Collins and Romine and Aviles.
Yeah, and Stephen Moy was never used in high leverage, especially in high leverage situations, or at all for that matter, when he was called up until that one route 11-4 nearing the end of September in Cleveland, when the Indians routed the Tigers in that game. Moya pinch hit in the ninth, didn't do a thing, but he wasn't even getting warmed up because Brad Ausmus before then never used him since Al Avila called him up. That's another example of the stupidity of Brad Ausmus and Al Avila. They're starting not to take the Tigers as seriously as we do. The fans do. The fans are smarter. We especially are smarter. Al Avila and Brad Ausmus continue to be dumb and careless. Now, moving on here, Jared Saltalamacchia got off to a hot start this previous season, and hit 7 home runs in the beginning of April, but since then he tailed off and never bounced back. James McCann still hasn't produced with his bat. Andrew Romine continues to be Andrew Romine, although he's found ways to get on base, mostly by drawing walks. Eric Ibar didn't help much when the Andrew Romine, by the way, also made a lot of stupid base running mistakes. He's a bad base runner. He doesn't run too slow, but he's very bad because he just keeps making those stupid base running mistakes, whether it be not using his head while getting caught in a rundown or just making a bad move on the base pass.
Well, the team as a whole featured a lot of bad base running throughout the year, which again, it should have been seen as another indictment on Ausmus and another reason that he should not have been brought back. But, again, it's Al Avila's call, even though he did mention last year that this year was supposed to be a good tool in terms of improving the base running ability and on-field awareness and decisions. And it seems like it either stayed the same or it got worse even this year. So I don't have too much confidence of them improving in that aspect for next year, to say the least.
That's another example of why I'm rooting against the Tigers. Their base running is still awful, especially from a mental standpoint. They don't use their they don't use their fucking brains. Especially Brad Ausmus from the dugout and the players on the base paths put it all together. Eric Ibar didn't help much when the Tigers acquired him in a trade from the Braves for infielder Mike Aviles, who was a major disappointment, especially at the dish. Also in the pitching rotations, Anibal Sanchez also keeps getting worse. Mike Pelfrey was terrible in the starting rotation in his first year as a Tiger. Jordan Zimmerman started off red hot but plummeted quickly somehow. Looking at the bullpen, Justin Wilson has sputtered through the last 2 months. Francisco Rodriguez, as we mentioned before, blew 5 saves, but 2 of those 3 blown saves weren't his fault because of Brad Ausmus wearing him out by leaving him in games for too long and not using him at all for 10 straight games in one span in the month of August. You also have Alex Wilson and Bruce Rondon, who got off to an abysmal start when he returned to the majors, but then somehow improved. I thought that was a surprise.
If that's one silver lining that you look at, it would be the improvement of Rondon at the very least.
Definitely. So that would be that. So to top it off, I would think that the Tigers need a more offensive catcher, not and not just a defensive catcher. They keep sticking to catchers that are only good on defense and not offense. McCann and Saltalamacchia continued to sputter offensively, while on defense they still know how to. They still have the capability to throw runners out, catch them trying to steal second base, for example.
Well, here's a proposition, Taylor. Even though most likely fans, I think, would have been ridiculing Avila anyway for making this decision, and would have reeked of nepotism, would you have been in favor of the team bringing back Alex Avila, Al's son, to be the catcher for the team?
Probably not. I don't think Alex Avila has improved offensively for the Chicago White Sox the way I see it. I even looked at his numbers once, and they weren't too good. There's got to be another route in the catching department that the Tigers need to take, that if they want to look for more offense. If the Tigers want to win, want to start making the postseason again, which I hope they don't, as long as Ausmus is still their manager. But that's the way everyone sees it with the catchers with the Tigers catchers offensively. Saltalamacchia, as I mentioned before, tailed off after hitting 7 home runs in the beginning of April. James McCann continued to be, James McCann offensively. And all things fell into place, and everything still stays the same, even without Alex Avila. That's the truth. That's the way everyone has seen it. So I guess the Tigers will have to stick to McCann and Saltalamacchia if they're stuck with them by contracts, unless they've expired, unless one of those contracts has expired or they can breach. But anyway, they need to fix their pitching, their starting pitching rotation. They need to breach Anibal Sanchez's contract because he keeps getting worse, and he's never improved. Maybe he's improved a little bit, but not enough. I think it's time for Onaball to breach and leave. Mike Pelfrey still has 1 year left on his contract. I would use Pelfrey from the bullpen instead of in the starting rotation. Matt Boyd, just mediocre, not terrible, but overall, it's his rookie year, but who knows what he'll do next season. It's a wait and see approach. Fulmer was fantastic. Michael Fulmer almost won the AL Rookie of the Year, in my opinion. He had a hell of a first half of this previous regular season. Justin Verlander, what can we say? He's just great out there. Continues to be great. That's a no-brainer. But as far as the bullpen is concerned, that still has room for improvement. Although it's been good overall, there's still room for improvement. To sum it all up,
I think the summation of the bullpen is it's not a finished product where it wanted to be, but it's not as bad as it would have been in years past.
Of course,
when talking about dealing with the likes of Nathan or Valverde or Brian Villarreal
or Jabba Chamberlain,
players of that sort,
or Jabba Chamberlain.
Oh God, there's a reason why I kept him unmentioned, because I didn't want to have any memories of his horrific outings, like going through PTSD almost.
I have to agree. So, if the Tigers have also committed quite a handful of errors as well, they need to improve on that. Especially Ian Kinsler, who has committed a few errors, at least a couple of them costly. Now, granted, he is a defensive percentage, fielding had one of the best fielding percentages during the regular season, but he's got to cut back on the errors. Nick Castellanos, his injury was detrimental, but the Tigers, on the other hand, could not overcome that, and that's what pisses Tigers fans off. They can't. There are a lot of things that the Tigers can't overcome. Injuries, and that's how weak this Tigers organization is, and they need to start shaping up. It's almost as if they can't overcome a damn thing. But they've overcome other obstacles. But all in all, I'm rooting against the Tigers, even though they'll do better than what I hope them to do. Even though they might do a little better than how I hope them to do. So we finally talk all Tigers. Now let's move on to football.
Touchdown, Detroit Lions!
Starting in the pros, the Lions. We're heading into Chicago and playing the then winless Bears at Soldier Field. and they only scored 2 field goals and 1 85-yard touchdown run. And they never scored an offensive touchdown, and they lost 17-14 to the Bears.
Damn it! Are you kidding me with this?
Just another game full of penalties, 10 for the Lions, 8 for the Bears. Lots of inconsistency and mistakes. Matthew Stafford threw 2 interceptions, the only 2 turnovers in the game altogether. One of them was an intended pass for Golden Tate, who didn't even turn back while running his route and absolutely overran that pass, and the Bears just flat out easily picked it off. And Matthew Stafford was really irate at Golden Tate, who never even paid attention. He never even turned back.
No, he essentially thought it was a vertical route instead of turning his head just one fucking time to see where his quarterback was going with the ball. And as you saw on the sideline, Stafford was pissed. He was incensed, and rightfully so. That was a chance to drive down the field, late in the half, get some points, preferably a touchdown, and they threw it away all because of a horrific miscommunication and a very, very blown opportunity to take control of this game. And Stafford realized that. That's why he was so pissed off at Tate.
Yeah, Stafford has been irate at least twice this season at one of his receivers, whether it be Golden Tate, Eric Ebron, or some other receiver.
He did blow up at Marvin Jones at one point too.
Yeah.
All these blowups for very valid reasons. In the case of Ebron and Jones, it was in late game situations where, the team's driving down the field, they have no timeouts left, and instead of trying to get out of bounds, they decide to fuck around, stay in bounds, or to pick up a few extra yards, which in turn led to precious seconds being wasted, which led to, again, Stafford, showing that he is the leader, taking charge, and chewing their asses out around the field. And the other instance we mentioned, the aforementioned Sunday miscommunication between Stafford and Tate. Tate thought it was going to be one route he was running. Stafford obviously had a different mindset, and both players didn't click. Led to a turnover and a blown missed chance for Lions.
Yeah, and the Lions are speaking of not overcoming injuries. That's the same weakness the Lions are having. Just like the Tigers, the Lions are not overcoming the injuries of Amir Abdullah, who's apparently out for the season. Ezekiel Ansah, and DeAndre Levy still out. Now Eric Ebron is out. Now tight end Eric Ebron is likely out, doubtful. In other words, against the Philadelphia Eagles with an injured knee and ankle. So be it.
So be it. And to be honest, as seeing the display of him once again, just showing how invaluable of a top 10 draft pick he is. One play where he essentially gives up. In terms of he thinks it's not going well, so he just stops in the middle of the play, middle of the field, gives up, which leaves room for his teammates theoretically to get massacred and smashed in by defenders, and in essence almost got Ebron rolled up because he couldn't take his mind. He took his mind off the ball and didn't pay attention to what the fuck was going on behind him.
Right. You gotta pay more attention. You got to keep your head up, just like in hockey. That's one way you can avoid injuries. And Eric Ebron paid the price.
There were an assortment of issues that was going on that led to that debacle of performance for the team. One thing, first and foremost, that led off this team seems uninterested. Like it almost seems it was giving up on themselves mid-game. And if anything, that has to be a reflection, without question, a reflection on the manager. Excuse me, on the coach, Jim Caldwell. You're the head coach. You're the head guy in charge of that locker room. It is up to you, at the very least, to get your players coached up and motivated and focused together as a cohesive, gelled unit, as a team, perform to the best of their abilities and capabilities. And clearly, from what we've seen now, going in year 3 of this failed experiment, it is not the case here. It seems the things that constantly doomed the Lions have doomed them all season, have doomed them several seasons, reared its ugly head yet again. An atrocious day of running the football. They can't even manage even 100 yards collectively as a whole unit. In fact, the second highest rusher on the team was Matthew Stafford, with 17 yards of him. Whereas for Chicago, they can't do jack shit with running the football last month. And in this game, Jordan Howard runs the fucking football down their throats. He has 23 carries, which falls out to 111 yards. Brian Hoyer, the former Spartan, who looks like he was, he's a backup for a reason, but even still, he's not a very good quarterback. And here, lights the team up, 28-36, 8 incompletions, over 300 yards, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions, and a QBR of almost 90, with a quarterback rating of 120, player rating of 120. Excuse me. I know you have odds out with injury. I know DeAndre Levy's out with injury, but still, that's no fucking excuse. You cannot let a backup quarterback go out there and stick the ball in like he's Carson Palmer or something.
No, you can't. You gotta try to bring the pressure, regardless who you're missing, regardless how many players you're missing.
They can't really do that because their secondary is putrid, and again, they showed their inability to cover tight ends, whereas Zach Miller scored what eventually turned out to be the goal, the deciding score on a touchdown in the end zone, corner of the end zone, where he was left uncovered. Antoine Williams played a horrible coverage job on that. Essentially did bump and play off and basically left Miller by himself in the end zone, which led to that touchdown. Total discombobulation. Like I mentioned before, no chemistry, a total lack of awareness from all sides here, from Tate to Ebron to Williams, offense and defense. This whole team seems completely a whole roster of mixed signals. And again, that reflects and falls back on your head coach.
Yeah,
another instance. I'll let you get on with this, Taylor. But another thing that looked bad was the offensive line. Again, last week Taylor Decker. The week before it was Tomlinson. This week Travis Swanson got bowled over. Giving me flashbacks to Don Mariola, his undersized ass getting run over. The shit never seems to end with this. What other ways of misery can we find to torture ourselves with this week, it seems?
Yeah, their offensive line needs some real motivation. They need more training. They may, I don't know if they may need a new offensive line coach, or a better one that would be even nicer. But they need to start pulling their weight.
The tragic thing is. The management and front office has spent, better part of 2-3 years, essentially all of Jim Caldwell's tenure, the amount of that Caldwell's tenure has been, into improving and adding depth to the offensive line, and it hasn't gotten them jack shit.
Right.
How many first round draft picks has got to be wasted on a no good offensive lineman?
Man, you tell me. Just a lot, huh?
Oh.
Those are all examples of why the Fords should sell the Lions to Dan Gilbert. And like we mentioned before, there's a possibility that Dan Gilbert in 2 or 3 years may own the Lions and Tigers. Things could turn around if that happens. the Fort selling the Lions is one thing. Dan Gilbert owning the Lions is another, which is even better, which may be even better. But step one and step two, that's just the order process. But the Lions return home for 3 straight games: the Eagles, the Rams, and the Redskins. At least two of the three games are not winnable.
No, especially seeing how both Philly and both the Rams have looked in this season so far. First, we'll start with the Eagles. They're 3-0. They just had a bye week, but the game before, they absolutely crushed, dismantled, destroyed the Pittsburgh Steelers 34-3. That was the worst loss that the Steelers had suffered since 1989. So rarely, if ever, had we ever seen the Steelers, this storied, historic franchise, with all the championships, very rarely do they get dominated in the fashion that we saw. And we saw that. We saw the Eagles do that against them, and it's led strongly behind, believe it or not, their defense. And when Jim Schwartz, the defensive coordinator for the Eagles, and of course, former Lions coach, is leading the way. And I think you're seeing some of the staples of what a Jim Schwartz defense looks like. Bring pressure and apply pressure by using just your front four and getting turnovers. Where have I seen that before? Oh, yeah, it was here. So you're using that same working familiar formula, working for Schwartz as it did in Detroit for the most part, working here for Philly, and it's paying off the good results. So expect that to come into play when the Eagles roll into town this upcoming Sunday. Whereas with the Rams are concerned, wouldn't you say they're one of, if not the surprise team in the league so far this year? They're 3-1. It's more so, like you said, it's not so much their quarterback per se, but as a team as a whole, with their own defense, they seem to be getting things done. Todd Gurley, I think you could say, has been a huge part of that. A good part of that, I would say, especially when you compare him to how the Lions running game goes. He outperforms them by almost essentially by himself. So those are 2 games back to back, at home or not, still, that you would have thought looking into the season might have been looking at wins, but now looking at possible losses. And if that's the case, you're looking at a potential 1-5 start to your season. Dangerously close to what we saw last year with the 1-7 start, which led to Tom Awan being fired, Martin Mayhew being fired, and what was it?
Rod Wood,
Lombardi,
the president, and Bob Quinn, the GM.
And, it led to Joe Lombardi getting fired as well, which, of course, led to the hiring of Jim Bob Cooter. So if we get another similar situation, it's a good chance that before we even exit the month of October, we could be seeing more changes being made to the Lions, both in terms on the sideline with their coaching personnel.
Hopefully the head coach Jim Caldwell. Because
it was more than likely. I don't, because the Fords have they have such a high likability of him and of such bullshit. They won't they won't do the right thing and fire him in the middle of the year. Where it's clearly, it seems, they're going to have to be battling the Bears to see who will be in last place in this division. And yet, so far, the Bears have the head-to-head tiebreaker on them. So if it bottoms out, like me and you and a lot of fans are expecting / hoping to see, most likely that's when they'll pull the plug. They'll fire Caldwell. They'll get a high draft pick, and then hopefully, finally, they'll give Quinn a chance to find his own coach. Because I don't believe. I think he was merely forced by the family upon taking his job to keep Caldwell, at least for this year.
Yeah, that was the Ford's decision to keep Caldwell. It wasn't the GM's job, but
exactly. So if we see a similar situation where they miss the playoffs and let's say they lose 10, double digit games, 10 or more games, that's perfect grounds for Caldwell not to be brought back, and then Quinn to find what? His own damn head coach.
Right.
The general manager was fucking job.
But again, the Fords keep oversteering this ship, this Detroit Lions ship to stupidity, on and over and over again, down the road of even more stupidity, just more additional stupidity, and they actually want it to continue. So
it's probably the part of the section where we make the prediction of what's going to happen with the Eagles game, the Eagles contest this Sunday.
Yeah, I'd have to agree. I predict the Philadelphia Eagles 35 and the Lions 10, the way the Lions have been playing lately, especially last week.
Well, if the spread is Philly -4, I think they will win and cover. I'd say my prediction for the score is going to be Philly 28, Detroit 17, even though they could fuck around and score a late touchdown to make it closer as it is, or do something of that similar to that nature. So don't be surprised if they try score another vintage garbage time touchdown or whatever to make it a 7-point or 4-point game. Then they just fail to get the onside kick like we saw this week. So, but still, my pick is Philly wins and they cover. Let's go 28-17.
All right. So that those are our predictions. So that's all for pro football. Time to go to college football, and let's start off with the bright side first.
Touchdown, Michigan!
The 4th-ranked Michigan Wolverines edged the 8th-ranked Wisconsin Badgers 14-7. We expected this to be a defensive game because both teams have stout defenses, and they both proved it to be. But Michigan, as expected, proved to be the better defensive team, especially with that phenomenal leaping one-handed interception catch by Jordan Lewis. What did you think of that, Ed?
My first instant thought was that's the best single catch I've seen since Charles Woodson in '97 at East Lansing against the Spartans. That's the thing that immediately rang out to mind to me. And with the whole recent branding affiliation going back to Nike and teaming up with the Jumpman with Michael Jordan's brand, it seemed a bit comically ironic to say, right, Jordan Lewis makes the spectacular grab, and if you freeze frame it, you would think it's a modified Jumpman logo. So Air Jordan would be the right pun to use in this situation.
Man, talk about a setup, or maybe a true representation of it, of Air Jordan. Wow.
Yeah,
Jordan Lewis.
That whole game. Exactly, but that whole game and what we saw Lewis did throughout that game, not just that interception, but providing excellent, just flat-out outstanding blanket coverage, getting the help that he needed from whether it be Channing Stribling or with Peppers in coverage, or even Delano Hill with open field tackling. Lewis was providing with his own key clutch open field tackles that stopped Wisconsin from getting crucial first downs where they needed to. I'm just going to come out and say it. Jordan Lewis is the best cornerback in college football today. I know will be some others they'll like to disagree or contend that, but what I'm seeing, production that's been going on consistently, and also you saw how this secondary is performing before he came back from his injury hiatus, and seeing how they've stepped up and performed since his return. It's undeniable how important his value is to this team. So by that margin, I'm declaring him to be the best cornerback in the nation. And the thing is, this defense, with the monstrous defensive line that they have, with Mo Hurst and Chris Wormley, and Rashad Gary, among others, and you factor in this secondary with the names I just mentioned, Peppers, Stribling, Lewis, Delano Hill, even Deontay Thomas, this is, you would say, one of the top 2 or 3 defenses in the whole entire country, not counting Alabama, of course, and Ohio State. But the thing is, the potential for this defense to be even better was the fact, when you take into consideration the fact that they did just recently lose Jeremy Clark, the senior, to a season-ending injury. So think about that. Think about how scary I thought that would have been, how even better this defense could be. It's not even their final form, you would say.
Mm-hmm. No doubt about that. That was what was key to this game.
Yeah, it was the most key thing. I still expected Wisconsin's defense to be pretty good, even without the services of Vince Beagle, one of their star linebackers. But even still, they came to play. They didn't come to lay down. T.J. Watt, for example, the younger brother of J.J. Watt, he was a force to be reckoned with. You had to keep an eye on him throughout the whole game. I think he had at least a sack or two in vital and key pivotal moments to help keep his team in the game. So trust me, this was not going to be an easy cupcake compared to teams that they faced before. So I mentioned before that Wisconsin, with their defense, they were going to try their very best to stop the box, to stop the run. Now, they weren't entirely successful. You still had, instances where, whether it be Devion Smith or Ty Isaac or Chris Evans, breaking off big runs, that they weren't able to shut down Michigan's running game as a whole. In fact, if anything, Michigan did what Wisconsin wanted to do. They did that to Wisconsin. On the whole, Michigan almost outgained the Badgers in terms of total yards offense by almost 200 yards. I think 349 to 159. That was the margin. Yet this is only a 7-point game because of a couple of factors. One, the defenses were tremendous. Wisconsin getting that interception, which led to their touchdown on a perfect field route throw from Hornibrook to Agumbawale. That was just a perfect throw. Nothing else you can do about that. But also, the reason why this was 14-7 instead of, say, 23-7 was 3 missed field goals by the Michigan Special Teams unit, particularly by Kenny Allen, who had a roller coaster days you can get. He was terrific with the punts, but just absolutely terrible with the place kicking. He essentially missed 2 easy field goals, one of them being within chip shot range, which could have put the game out of reach, and then the third one, Tice, the kid that they bring in, he doesn't have a stronger leg, but no accuracy, as he's flat out missed a kick the whole way. So if there is one thing among other things that this team still needs to improve on, it is their special teams, or at least with their kicking game, because you can't afford to do that. For instance, if you play against Ohio State or play on the road at a crucial moment, you need to get all the points that you can get. So at the very least, it'll put the game out of reach and don't essentially take the pressure off your defense to try to come up with crucial stop after crucial stop. It worked last week, but you can't depend on that every single week.
Now, moving forward to the Rutgers Scarlet Knights game, that's Michigan's first road game in 2016. The Scarlet Knights are 2-3. That game starts at 7 on ESPN2, by the way. But the Wolverines, looking at that matchup, the Wolverines totally outmatched the Knights 90 in like all categories. 96.1%, according to ESPN, has predicted Michigan to win. The spread is 30 points, and the over-under is over 50. There's no doubt Michigan's going to win this game.
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
I just said there's no doubt Michigan's going to win this game.
Oh, they're going to win. They're going to roll, even though it's on the road. But knowing the test they just dealt with and seeing what's ahead of them, you look at the teams that are on the schedule: Rutgers, Illinois, MSU, Maryland, Iowa, Indiana. Essentially, they don't have another true tough test the rest of the way until Ohio State. Now, granted, they're going to be going on the road more. This one, MSU and then Iowa. But have you seen how MSU played? As of late, we're going to get to them in a little bit. But seeing how Iowa, they lost to North Dakota State of all teams. Even though that game will be an 8 o'clock start on the road in Kinnick, I still think this team should have enough firepower, at least from the defensive end, to handle their business and get them into a position potentially where they could be undefeated on the precipice of either being number 4 or still number 4 being number 3 by the time that Ohio State game rolls around. So, what else needs to be said here is essentially this is a glorified scrimmage, in my opinion. Next week's homecoming, so you don't want to fall into a trap game. This is what you call trap game territory, knowing that OSU is 3 weeks away, but you still got to take care of business first here with at Rutgers, and next week for homecoming against Illinois. So they'll do that. They'll get that done. Michigan will light it up, and their defense will put the clamp. So I say Wolverines 42, Rutgers 3.
I love it.
I'm picking Michigan Wolverines. I'm picking Michigan 45, Rutgers 6. Just to be a little more fair. But you and I both think that the Wolverines are going to roll. Everybody else thinks the Wolverines are going to roll. Because, again, they outmatched the Scarlet Knights, period. Even on the road. So, speaking of MSU...
Touchdown, MSU!
Boy, did the Spartans get embarrassed on the road last Saturday. They lost to the Indiana Hoosiers 24-21 in overtime in Bloomington. They were 17th ranked going into that contest, and now they fall out of the top 25 in all polls. Tyler O'Connor and his offense put up 21 points, unlike compared to the 6 they put up against Wisconsin at home. They put up 21 points on the road, but they still find a way to lose. And it's just embarrassing. Riley Bull is still out, but that's definitely not an excuse. The Spartans kept finding ways to fall behind, and they just absolutely blew the pooch. Especially in overtime, their offense, did it suck.
It was terrible. The offensive line they were essentially getting O'Connor killed out there. This is a game where I'm not necessarily I won't be putting the full totem of blame on O'Connor. I thought he had a far better game this week than he did the week before against Wisconsin. And in this instance, 3 touchdowns, no interceptions, no turnovers. But still, in overtime where it mattered most, he just wasn't able to get off the right amount of the pass off of time because his offensive line was just absolutely failing him and getting him blown up in the backfield, which led to, unfortunately, costly sacks that took them out of field goal range when you think about it.
Damn it!
Yeah, and O'Connor got sacked twice on 2nd down and 3rd down because the offense in overtime because the offensive line couldn't help him. They got bowled over just like the Lions' offensive line did in Chicago in many other games. But that was the key to Indiana easily winning in overtime. And
not to mention the fact that essentially Indiana got a gift. Indiana got an absolute gift of gifts from Michigan State because on their first field goal attempt in overtime, Griffin Oakes, the kicker, who was 0 for 2 beforehand in that game, missed this one, but because of a leaping penalty, I guess if you have memories of 2003, Colts versus Bucks on Monday Night Football, Simeon Rice, that's essentially what cost Michigan State the game because it gave Indiana, number 1, a fresh set of downs, and 2, much closer field goal range for the kicker to come out there, essentially kick a knuckleballer over the goalpost, and that was it. The game was essentially lost right there on that penalty, which is, again, very uncharacteristic of this team with their identity with Mark D'Antonio as the head coach. So, by all intents and purposes, the season is over. If they had any outside shot of trying to make a miracle run to get to the playoff, it died right here and there in Bloomington on last Saturday night.
Yeah, not to mention Malik McDowell's targeting penalty, which was false.
Which was bullshit. It was a bullshit call. You show me in what realm of existence was that a targeting. But even still, that can't be shown as a reason why. Was it Malik McDowell's fault that the offensive line imploded in overtime? No. Or or whatever the case may be. Even if you have Malik McDowell in there, you probably still commit that leaping penalty that gives Indiana that fresh set of downs. So can't blame that. Again, you can't scapegoat and use an excuse to defend a loss like that. Just can't.
The Spartans will have to try and rebound, get their swagger back, and head back as they head back home and play the Brigham Young Cougars, the BYU Cougars, who are 2-3. The Spartans have now dropped to 2-2, bowing out of the top 25 in all polls, as I mentioned before. The BYU Cougars game kicks off at 3:30 this Saturday on either ABC or ESPN2. Reverse mirror mode, possibly on ABC. ESPN2 may black out, may be subject to blackout. First ever meeting between those two schools in football. 50% exactly predicted MSU, and the other exact 50% predicted BYU to win. So in other words, it's a coin flip. And BYU
it's basically a pick-em.
BYU has a rookie coach as well.
I think the only difference that's helping Michigan State is the fact that it's in East Lansing. But again, what good did it help them against Wisconsin? They got absolutely, in your words, jail-sexed. So, you can't really have too much confidence in them defending home turf this time around, even if it is against a team like BYU. But let's be honest here. BYU's offense is something to not sleep on. They're averaging, 425 yards per game, more than what Michigan State has produced, but still their defense, very poor secondary. They've allowed an average of over 310 yards per game. So that's something that Tyler Conner could use to his advantage. But first and foremost, they've got to get back to establishing running the football. I didn't see that at all. Obviously against Wisconsin, I didn't really see that against Indiana. So, if anything, we got to find L.J. Scott or use another guy in there, whatever the case may be. You've got to get the running game back on before you can focus on whatever offensive woes are plaguing you. You've got to fix the running game, first and foremost.
And you got to fix the offensive line. Tyler O'Connor needs help. I would predict MSU to win a close one, probably 27-24. I think their offense has improved a little bit, especially on the road against Indiana after absolutely getting absolutely neutralized by Wisconsin's stout defense at home in East Lansing. The Spartans are taking on a much easier non-conference team in the BYU Cougars. Again, they're 2-3. It's at home in East Lansing. Those are advantages that the Spartans need to take advantage of. Otherwise, they could be in deep shit.
This is a game they should win, but last week you thought should have been an easy win, or at least a comfortable, close, if albeit close win. Coming into the fall of an Indiana game, I really don't know what the hell to expect from this team. Are they going to show up and get destroyed like they did against Wisconsin? Or are they going to show some fucking fight for once like they did against Notre Dame? I will err on the side of caution. I'll give them probably one last chance. This is probably my last, if they blow this one, they're screwed. That's even before we get to Michigan. So, I'll show some faith at least one more time in Michigan State. I'd say they win this one. There'll be a razor thin edge. I'd say 17-16. I think the defense will show up, and MSU get the late touchdown.
Okay. That'll make George Blaha happy. That'll make Jason Strayhorn happy. The Spartan Sports Network and all of its affiliates around the great state of Michigan. Now, one more team we need to cover. My Central Michigan Chippewas.
Touchdown, Central Michigan!
They got absolutely destroyed at home, 49-10, by the Western Michigan Broncos at Kelly Short Stadium. The Broncos came out and really dominated the game, and the Chips fell absolutely flat on both sides of the ball, except for which excludes special teams. Cooper Rush didn't do much and threw an 86-yard pick six to Darius Phillips to pretty much stab the daggers into the hearts of the CMU faithful in Mount Pleasant. Darius Phillips has been one of the X factor, who's one of the star players on this Bronco team, led by a powerful and mentally sound head coach, P.J. Fleck. Zach Terrell, their quarterback, lit it up. His offensive line helped him, made great deep touchdown passes. They took advantage of many mistakes that my Chips made. And see it, and from the looks of it, CMU had a couple chances to try and come back into this game early in the second half, and they absolutely fucking blew it. They just flat out fucking blew it, and they never even came back, even if they tried. That was just a shitty performance by Central Michigan.
Alone should have told you how, let you know how embarrassing it was. I would have thought CMU, knowing it's a rivalry game, they would show a little bit more competitive heart in there, but they just got fucking destroyed in there. So what else can you say? That you got to find a way to move on, brush yourself up, pick yourself back up, and try to improve. Put that in the rearview mirror and focus on winning this game against Ball State. I will mention that even though Ball State is 3-2, the teams that they faced,
just like CMU.
The teams that they faced that got those wins, Florida Atlantic, Eastern Kentucky, or whatever, EKY, whatever the hell they are. Those are, I guess you could call them borderline FCS teams. So again, I think we can give Central Michigan a little bit more better credit than that. And by the way, if you look at the losses that Ball State has faced, they've lost to Northern Illinois and Indiana. So if that should be any indication, CMU should hopefully find a way to bounce back. My pick is they do, but won't necessarily cover the 12-point spread. I'd say it'll be a 34-28 type of victory. Close, but Central should get it done. They'll have a bounce back.
I'd say CMU 31, Ball State 27. I'd say the Chippewas get a late touchdown and hold on. So that kicks off that Chips Cardinals game at Kelly Short Stadium kicks off at 3:30 on the Chippewa Sports Network from IMG on the radio. Their flagship station, 98.5 UPS, with Don Shido and Brock Gutierrez. Adam Jackson, their sideline reporter. Quarterback Riley Neal for the Ball State Cardinals has racked up 1,175 passing yards, but only 5 touchdown completions, whereas Cooper Rush still has already, despite that awful outing, still has already racked up 1,537 passing yards for 11 touchdown completions. So I expect their offense to rebound, but their defense has to dust themselves off and try to improve. And it's that simple.
What score are you thinking for the game, Taylor?
Yeah, I said 31-27 CMU.
Oh, okay. By the way, minor brief football note before we move on here. I wanted to actually give everyone an update on the status of Michigan offensive lineman Grant Newsome, who, as you saw last Saturday against Wisconsin, suffered a very very bad knee injury that most likely will require surgery, and actually did require surgery and effectively ended his season right then and there. The prognosis is that the surgery went well. He should be able to make a full recovery, and if he's fast enough with his recovery time, he'll probably be ready for spring ball. But knowing that a few of them will probably be on the side of caution, they'll just wait until the fall before they try to find a way to factor in how he will have a spot in place in the rotation of the line on the team. So that's your injury/news update regarding the Wolverines off the field with injuries, or at least in the case of Grant Newsome. So get well, Grant. Hope to see you in better shape next year.
Damn it!
Thanks for the update, Ed. All thoughts and prayers and condolences passed along to him and his family. Hope to have him back next year. And they will have him back next year. So,
one more other minor injury note. You might have noticed Ron Higdon, the running back that you saw being used against Penn State, he did not suit up, did not play last week against Wisconsin. That was due to him dealing with his own injury problems, some brief swelling in his knee. So the team decided to err on the side of caution, don't try to use him. So they got, hence you saw the depth of carries being used by Isaac instead of Higdon in that situation. Most likely the consensus says he'll be ready to go this week against Rutgers.
yeah, I still think the Wolverines can blow out the Scarlet Knights on the road.
Oh, easy. You could almost call it a layup lock.
Yep. All right, any other updates before we move on to hockey?
I think that just about covers it.
Yep. Let's hit the ice. Got a couple Red Wings articles to dissect here. The Red Wings, again, an article from DetroitRedWings.com regarding one of their defensemen, Jonathan Ericsson, who has had a hip impingement for 4 years and was playing through it the whole time, which made him look awful on the ice. He produced 15 points offensively in each of the last 2 seasons. He was afraid to block shots. He kept refusing to physically check opposing players to make plays defensively, and he kept turning the puck over numerous times. I think the Wings should have put Ericsson on long-term injury reserve a long time ago. It does require surgery, too. Season-ending surgery. It may be career-ending surgery, but either way, it's going to keep him out of action for a very long time, which is good on our behalf because the Wings simply cannot afford to have players play that badly, especially due to a horrible injury like that. And even if they weren't injured, they would, if they still sucked, then they shouldn't play on this team.
But that's if he even decides to go through with the surgery, because if you go through his article, Ericsson has pretty much, he said it without essentially saying it, that he's going to fight through it, play through the pain, and won't have the surgery at all. So he said, by the long recovery time, Ericsson said he hopes to postpone surgery until after he is done playing. So I guess that means his season is over, or unless he decides to retire, he's going to keep playing with this crippling pain, not only crippling to him, but crippling to the team in terms of production and efficiency as a whole, until he decides he can no longer do it, which is one part selfish, but also the other part maddening, because this is being very detrimental to you and your team, yet you decide to go through it. Well, then fine, shit, you deserve to play the way you've been playing.
Mm-hmm. And that's going to hurt the team. I would rather have a healthier team rather than have a defenseman keep fighting through the pain and not make the plays that we anticipate him to make, especially on the defensive side of the defensive end of the hockey rink. I would rather have 4 guys on the ice rather than a player that desperately needs surgery.
Or hey, how about this? Just because it's excuse for you to get more minutes for Brendan Smith out there. Hint, hint, motherfuckers.
Yeah, Brendan Smith, although he is known for making dumb mistakes on the ice and on the bench as well, he's still statistically their best defenseman on the roster. So,
Credit Prashant Iyer on that. You can follow him on Twitter at Iyer_Prashant.
Yep. Yeah, I would rather have. Yeah, I definitely would. I'd rather have Brendan Smith and Nicholas Cronwall rather than Jonathan Ericsson out there. Cronwall's not hurt, but he still can't hit anymore. Is he going through pain? I don't know.
Basically. I don't know. You wouldn't be too surprised because these players play with pain essentially every day of every year. So it wouldn't be too much of a surprise, but even still, you would have one useless corpse out there in Cornwall, then 2 with both him and Ericsson at the same time. But Ericsson says he wants to play through it, through his own, determined, stubborn, some would say dumb/selfish motives / reasons or whatever. So if you want to, go ahead if you want to. But I wouldn't recommend it. You wouldn't recommend it. I think a good smart number of people wouldn't recommend it. So we'll see where it takes them.
Also, another article from Jeff Moss on Ken Holland being a salary cap era buffoon. It indicates he's one of the worst general managers in the National Hockey League. That's based on former Red Wings defenseman Kyle Quincy, who signed with the New Jersey Devils for 1 year worth $1.25 million. In the past, Holland had signed Quincy to 2 separate 2-year deals, that article reads, after giving up a first-round pick to reacquire Quincy from the Los Angeles Kings in the first place, totaling a little over $16 million.
You're crazy! You're crazy! You're crazy!
So basically, Quincy was picked up on a basically bargain bin price. Was very, very, very overpaid and overvalued during his time here in Detroit.
Mm-hmm. And Quincy averaged $4 million per year while carrying out his second tour of duty in Detroit while playing an average of 19 minutes and 46 seconds a game last season. There were times that Quincy was even getting run on the team's first defensive unit. He also played nearly 20 minutes a night when healthy over the team, auditioning Xavier Ouellet, Ryan Sproul, or Nick Jensen to see what they had before clearing waivers and heading to the Grand Rapids Griffins. The thing we've learned from this article altogether from Moss is that Ken Holland spends way too much money on veteran players like Kyle Quincy in the past before he left for New Jersey in free agency, unlike other general managers.
And make indefensible contracts like giving like the ones that he's done to Danny DeKeyser and of course Justin Applicator, which oh god, don't even get me started on that.
Yeah, long-term contracts, just like he gave Jonathan Ericsson and Nicholas Cronwall in the past. Oh, fucking Christ. Ken Holland is an outrageous money-spending GM now. And he's been doing that since the Red Wings, lost their Stanley Cup in 2009 at home. That made Ken Holland go crazy. And Ken Holland just keeps not overcoming that. It just continues to hurt him mentally, and he still can't overcome that. He's a pussy. And he's an arrogant, brash old man who can't admit that he keeps making mistakes and and he can't admit that he's leaving the Red Wings farm system behind. That's a total major disaster. And we know that as well.
I mean, what do you expect? Is this the same guy that didn't want to bring back Marion Hossa, but decided to bring back the walking concussion case that is Johan Franzen year after year?
The dead mule.
That explains that. That says it all right there.
Yeah. No doubt about that. The Red Wings, having won their last exhibition game 5-2 over the Pittsburgh Penguins at Consol Energy Center after getting rocked in the second of the home-and-home set at United Center to the Chicago Blackhawks 6-1. They doubled up the Chicago Blackhawks 6-3 at Joe Louis Arena in the first of the home-and-home set after losing 2-1 on overtime to the Boston Bruins at the Joe. Just to update you guys on what's been happening right now in exhibition play for the Red Wings. They got a home and home set coming up in Toronto against the Maple Leafs Friday, and then at the Joe on Saturday against those Leafs, Mike Babcock's Leafs. Mike Babcock. And I believe that would be about it before they drop the puck on their 2016-2017 NHL regular season in St. Petersburg at Amalie Arena against you-know-who, the Tampa Bay Lightning, who have eliminated the Red Wings in the first round the last two consecutive seasons, in 2015 last year in 7 games, where the Red Wings had 2 chances to put away the Lightning in 5 games and then 6 games, and then the Lightning just obliterating the Red Wings in 5 games due to the lack of discipline on the ice, especially in Game 1 where Justin Abdelkader got into a fight while his team was surging on the attack across the neutral zone with 11 seconds left. We all remember that. And the Lightning just carried the momentum on through there, and the Red Wings continue to shoot themselves in the fucking heads. That's just mediocre. First round loss, first round elimination after first round elimination. That's three fucking straight first round elimination rounds for the Red Wings. And they still remain the same as Ken Holland signs Franz Nielsen, Thomas Vanek, and Steve Ott, who has scored at least 2 goals this preseason, and picked up 1 assist. That's not too shabby. In fact, that's pretty good.
Yeah, but it's preseason hockey. You tend not to overvalue shit like that.
No, it might not matter to the regular season, but we never know. I still think the Red Wings are going to be the same. So moving on to the hardwood floor.
Left sideline 3, and he answers.
Playing a little basketball. The Pistons, we were going to preview last night their first exhibition game in Brooklyn. It's preseason, I know that, but we were going to at least announce that they were going to start their preseason at Barclays Center in Brooklyn against the Brooklyn Nets at 7:30 on 105.1 The Bounce. Used to be Detroit Sports 105.1, but I was on top of that one. They lost 101-94. Andre Drummond finished with a double-double of 17 points and 20 rebounds, 20 of them through the first 3 quarters, which is impressive. But it has been announced that point guard Reggie Jackson is out 6 to 8 weeks, or expected to be out 6 to 8 weeks with a knee injury. So new point guard Ish Smith takes over as a starter. One thing we have to keep in mind, the Pistons are the Pistons aren't necessarily going to waste any more money by trading for another point guard. They might as well use Ish Smith and recall a backup from the NBA Developmental League.
Well, they did recently. It's a good thing now, looking in hindsight, that it did make the signing of Ray McCallum, who of course played nearby on West McNichols, or some will refer to as 6 Mile, playing for the Titans at UDM at Detroit Mercy. So it's a good thing they brought him along to go along with Ish Smith, especially now in timing of this injury. Now, it should be noted that what the injury that Jackson is dealing with specifically is tendonitis, and it's in his left knee. Stan Van Gundy mentioned that more than likely Jackson will not require surgery, and he could be out just for a mere 6 to 8 weeks. So let's do the timetable from now. I'm just going off the top of my head here. He should be back if he is back and rated up 100%. Early December? Would you say?
Sorta, yeah.
No later than mid-December, I would say.
Yeah, that's still a significant amount of time.
True, but he could still get in a very good, solid amount of games well before the All-Star break. So, again, it's a bad blow short term, but long term, it shouldn't affect their chances, because like we've mentioned before, and talking about it and analyzing it, the Pistons have done far better job of improving their bench this year as opposed to what they were rolling out last year. So, instead of dealing with the likes of Steve Blake, we can now deal with Ish Smith and now apparently Ray McCallum, among other players, Rich Bullock, Stanley Johnson, of course, the stayovers from last year. And I think with improvement, I think will be a huge improvement of adding Boban Marjanovic from the Spurs to your second unit will give you a great paint presence in more ways than one, and effectively, in a way, could help Drummond make improvements on the practice court, knowing he's got to deal with Boban every day in practice. So, in turn, that would make Drummond better, which is what the team will needs him to do. You know, only damn thing we need for him to do now is hit his fucking free throws.
Speaking of which, there was an article from Jeff Moss. A new one just popped up. Speaking of shooting free throws, Andre Drummond, Vice Chairman of PAL Sports and Entertainment, Art Tellem, wants center Andre Drummond to shoot free throws underhanded, and so does the rest of the Pistons organization. Now, earlier in this calendar year, Drummond says he was willing to shoot free throws underhanded, but now he's going back to refusing to shoot underhanded, because despite him shooting 35% from the stripe last season, he still feels, quote, too proud to switch the underhand shots, unquote. He has too much pride and ego. That's the point that we've learned from Moss's article about Drummond's free throw shooting.
And that's a very, very severe understatement. You could also use stubbornness. You could just use too much macho influence, if you would say so.
Your mind?
Either way, it's inexplicable, because when you are literally the worst free throw shooter in all of the entire National Basketball Association, you'll be willing to take almost any type of factor. This is an ailment, by the way. This is causing your team to bench you, the highest paid player on the team, to be benched in late game situations because you can't hit a fucking free throw to save your life. So if I were Drummond, I would be, looking at all my other possibilities, all alternate choices as to what I could do, because forget about your reputation. If you aren't able to hit free throws, you, with your presence in the paint, aren't going to be able to be seen, be put in late game situations, because you're going to be fouled and hacked all the time because you can't hit a free throw to save your life. So he's got to find a way to combat that if he wants to find himself in those late game situations, so he can effectively earn his money, as some would say, even though he's already got a big enough contract as is.
Yeah, so Drummond's going to have to put up or shut up with his free throw shooting. Otherwise, it's going to continue to hurt them throughout the entire season. So I think we put in a good 2 hours, excluding 15 minutes, but we still got to get to 10 questions here. Are you ready?
Ready as I'll be, Taylor, so just let him rip.
All right. Question number 1. Now that Brad Ausmus' $9 million option is picked up, do the Tigers stay the same, or do they get somehow worse?
In terms of how what I want / hope, if you want, in terms of the outcome of Ausmus not coming back, they would have to get worse. But most likely, I see them being where they are right now, give or take minus a couple games. Again, because as much as I hate to use it, see it being used as blissfully as we did with some of the PR, essentially the PR team of McCoskey and Henning and Fennick, using injuries as a way to defend Ausmus. Can't deny of an impact that he did play on this team. So let's say, they don't get wrecked with the injury bug that they did this year. You could see them, as a result of that, picking up a couple more wins to what they have right now. So, I don't see them getting worse, like the scenario that you have talked about, or even the scenario that I have talked about. So I see them staying, at the very least, staying where they are right now.
That is exactly why I'm declaring war on this organization and its beat writers, Henning, McCoskey, and Fennick, with my hashtag #TankToFireAusmus 2017. I'm getting my own troops to join in on my movement here.
Next question.
Question number 2, who's to blame for the result of Brad Ausmus' future in Detroit? Do you blame the general manager? Do you blame the beat writers? Do you blame the players, the coaches? Who do you blame?
I am a little bit hesitant, even though some of it should be deserved to I think Al Avila gets a little bit of the blame here, because even though it's his first full year as a GM, he has witnessed Brad up close for 3 years now. You would think he would know a better gauge of whether or not he should bring back this idiot or not. So a portion of that falls on Ausmus. Not Ausmus, but on Avila. Yeah. And again, another reason that has made me turn against the team, against this organization, is the constant cheerleading and essentially ass kissing that we've been seeing from the beat writers, and it's beyond disgusting. So if you want to have my 2 factors, it'll be part GM and part the beat team, aka the PR guys.
Yeah, they should all join the DTE Energy Squad girls on top of the dugout, and wear Brad Ausmus shirts, and put some skirts on too.
Throw in the pom-poms for good measure.
Yeah, let them stand out there in the cold.
Next question.
Question number 3, do the Tigers need to improve, or do they need to tank and do worse than this year to convince Al Avila to fire Brad Ausmus?
If you want Ausmus to be fired or not be brought back, technically, in terms of legalities of his contract, if you don't want to see Ausmus back for 2018, which is put like that, you would have to hope that the team does worse. Like I mentioned, this is the scenario I provided. You would have to say, no more than 75, 76 wins, while dropping as close to 90 losses as possible. I don't see them getting 100, let alone the 110, 20, 30, or 40 that you suggested. But if you want them, if you, the fans, want to see this happen, then I think that'll be the more realistic possibility, where they lose close to 90 games and they miss out on the playoffs again. That's what it would take, in my view, to not bring back Ausmus for 2018.
Close to 90 losses seems a little more fair. I would name that goal number 1.
Next question.
Question number 4: Are the Lions heading for another fall like they did in the first half of 2015?
Yes, they are. They still yet to play Minnesota this year. They got them coming up twice. first one is on Thanksgiving, I believe. Either way, they still got to face arguably the best defense in the whole league twice this season. And yet they're doing it without Adrian Peterson. It's another astonishing thing. You got to give Minnesota credit on that. So they still got to face the Vikings. They got the Eagles and Rams coming up. They could be 1-5 before they face Washington. Still got to play Green Bay one more time, as well as Chicago. Yeah, it's the way it's looking right now. Yeah, it's looking eerily similar to that 1-7 start that we saw last year. And we see it again this year. Could be. You would hope, and there's a good chance that you would see Bob Quinn be allowed to fully and utterly clean house.
Yeah, definitely. If the Fords allow him to. Expect a much bigger tidal wave.
Next question.
Question number 5. Does Golden Tate improve in any way, shape, or form, or does he continue to set off Matt Stafford? I forgot to mention something about Golden Tate. Offensive coordinator Jim Bob Cooter said Golden Tate is quote, ready to have a huge week.
Ah, shut up, you idiot. What? Oh.
What do you think about that?
If you want to take, I think it could mean, Kudu is going to probably try to draw more plays that will find a way to get Tate, make him feel more involved. Whereas Stafford, at the end of the day, Stafford is the quarterback. He's going to see who's open on that field. He'll get the ball to. He's the damn quarterback. So if Tate feels pissy that maybe Marvin Jones is getting more touches or getting more targets or whatever, do something about it. Don't sulk and pout. Fucking do something about it here. You want to be Mr. Playmaker. You want to be that top weapon, that top receiver. Especially now that Calvin Johnson's gone. Do something about it. I think this is probably his rock bottom moment, knowing the attention that it got on him. So I think he's got nowhere else to go but up. I think, yeah, he'll find a way to improve, at the very least, marginally. A very marginal improvement, at the very least.
Gotta have the balls first.
Next question.
Question number 6. Are we seeing Michigan State's offense improve slowly but surely?
In a way, yes, because the offensive line is still very much bad. It failed them in crucial key situations, like we saw in overtime against Indiana. Still haven't really established the running game that we've seen against Notre Dame and early on in the year. So, at least if you want to say they made small improvements, Tyler Conner didn't look like a mess. Like I mentioned before, 3 touchdowns, no picks. But other than that, it's still baby steps for this fledgling offense.
Next question.
Question number 7. How does Central Michigan regain their rhythm?
Lack of turnovers, I would say, and they got to find something. It's more mental more than anything. If the amount of points that their defense has given up, it starts and ends with their defense. They've got to make a point to themselves. Listen, we're not going to be anybody's passing lane or orange pylon to go around with ease. So I think it starts with their defense making a simple personal goal to themselves. And if you get find an improvement on your defense, that'll be a good way to kickstart you getting back some momentum on your side as we go through the season.
That's true.
Next question.
Question number 8. Should the Red Wings have placed Jonathan Ericsson on the long-term injury reserve a long time ago, even if it meant career-ending injury immediately?
Yeah, especially now, 4 years ago, when he was, in his late 20s, still had a chance to be gone to dead, or at the very least 3 years ago, it probably wouldn't have been such a bad factor to what we're seeing Ericsson perform now. Might have helped him improve a little bit as we can see. And, you wouldn't be in the situation where, with the amount of money that you're paying him, you have no choice but to be forced to play him, even if he's dealing with essentially a needing hip replacement or whatever the case may be. So, yes, they should have done this years ago, especially now knowing what we know.
Next question.
Question number 9, I just thought this up. How do you think the Pistons will fare without Reggie Jackson for the first 6 to 8 weeks, even through preseason, carrying into the regular season?
Well, their schedule won't be as hard early on as it would be throughout the rest of the year, primarily in March and April. The loss of Jackson will be felt, though, so they'll have a tougher time winning some games they probably should win by a more comfortable margin, because Jackson does provide a good spark on offense at the very least. But I think they'll be able to, like I said, between Ish Smith, Ray McCallum, and other guys, they'll fill in off that role off the bench. They'll still be okay. They'll just not be the full-fledgling, more powered, better team that we expect them to be this year. To start things out coming out the gate because of the injury to Jackson. So it'll affect them, but not too crippling like we saw a couple years back with Brandon Jennings' Achilles injury. It's not that bad, not that dire of a situation in my view.
Next question.
And finally, question number 10. Will Andre Drummond finally consider shooting free throws underhanded, and will it help him improve at the charity stripe?
I think we'll finally see Drummond consider doing the underhand free throws if his percentage gets lower and lower and lower. Like if he's sub 30, he's going to have a real, long, hard look in the mirror at himself, saying, "Hey, if I want to stop being ridiculed, I'm going to have to swallow my fucking pride and do this for the sake of our team." So even if he does do that, hey, what Rick Barry said, as he said on the DSR podcast with Jeff Moss, would be more than willing to coach Drummond or teach Drummond how to perform this task. So if I'm Drummond, I would take advantage of it, absolutely, if it comes down to it. If he finds a way to prove us wrong and shoots 45 to 50 to start things out with the current motion he has now, more power to him, but I doubt it.
I'd have to agree. Drummond somehow needs to get it going, especially in a different way. You gotta find some way to shake things up. So for all the listeners and fans out there, that's 10 questions. If you want to answer those questions, just replay the episode and answer them in the comment bank below this episode. You can fast forward it if you want to. That wraps up a long episode 231 of the Michigan Sports Truth. Ed, thanks again so much for your help. I'll talk to you again on episode 232 as we try to cram everything in again.
Yeah, we'll try to see what we can do. Hopefully we'll do it on a more brighter and optimistic note as we have a hopeful, better football weekend.
Yep. So are we looking at another Thursday again?
Most likely.
Yeah, if we want to do it once a week. And then the week after we go back to twice a week with the recaps and then the preview.
True. I mean, granted, Tiger season's at an end, but we still have basketball and hockey right around the corner here, so we might have to.
Yep. So I'll talk to you again Thursday at midnight.
All right, looking forward to it. Take care, Taylor.
Yep. Thanks. You too. Get some rest. So, before we sign off, I want to remind everyone to share this episode and our entire podcast on social media. Have their friends share that as well, and follow me on Spreaker as Taylor Phillips online at Spreaker.com, because I want to tell them that the Michigan Sports Truth podcast here on Spreaker is in search of local advertising sponsors, the Talk Shoe feed as well. If anyone has a business that's interested in sponsoring this program, please email me at taylorgator14@yahoo.com or privately message me on Facebook or Twitter. You can also follow Sports Radio Detroit on Twitter at Sports Radio Det and like the Facebook page and join their Facebook group. Also find their podcasts available on iTunes and Podbean. For Ed Smith, I'm Taylor Phillips. If there's anything you fans want more of or less of on our podcast, please let us know. Follow us on Twitter at DT2Phillips and at EdSmith313. Also like our Facebook page, The Michigan Sports Truth, on Spreaker, and join our Facebook group. TTFN, ta-ta for now.
Bon appetit.